Welcome to Color Me Happy. My name is Brandy Hofer. Thank you so much for being here today. I sure do appreciate it. This week we're talking about rolling with it. The theme in our community and on my newsletter. So that's Color Me Happy Community. It's free to join. You're welcome to be there. It's a beautiful community filled with really supportive, wonderful people. And newsletters, really fun. I do weekend inspiration. So we always have a little theme and we chat in there and I try to make you feel better about life. Kind of like we do here. But in like an inspiring, feel-good way. And so, yeah, we're talking about rolling with it. I feel like you have like young people in your lives or in general in life, rolling with it is way easier than fighting the current. And in fact, our guest here today, Jeff, and I speak about just that. And he gave a really visual reference to what I'm saying is if you're in a river and you're walking upstream fighting the current, arms open, it's just it feels hard. It's impossible. It's wearing you down, and eventually you drown, right? And I actually talk about that in my book. I specifically give not the same reference but similar. Instead of turning with the current and letting it flow past you, so I think a lot of that goes with, and what we've been talking a lot in the podcast about is manifesting and trusting in whatever it is you believe in. So God, the universe, energy, any sort of thing like that, or not believe. I actually didn't believe in a lot of things for a long time. And as soon as I started acknowledging that there was, or seeing that something was on my side and that coincidences started happening and there were little messages. And if they weren't, they sure make me feel better. That's for sure. So, and it actually started with the loss of my mom and finding dimes everywhere, which is a very long story. And I talked about it in a solo episode. You can go back and find that somewhere. I don't know what it's called. I can't even help you. It's in one of the episodes, and the solo ones are usually like shorter, and I usually cry, but again, they make you feel really good. So we're rolling with it, and where I came up with the theme of the week is rolling with it actually has gotten me to some pretty cool places, most recently in New York. One of the pieces in the collection, actually, so my son, Finn, painted an exercise ball, which is super, annoying, right? He wasted a whole bottle of paint on the exercise ball, and he, squished it all over it, and I was like, and of course I was, upstairs making dinner in sweats and whatever. I was just, I was pissed off and annoyed, and I have 3 of those, so... Right. So literally it's a funny story because I did just roll with it, and I took that ball and I took that paint, and you can see on my Brandy Hofer Studios reels that the painting where I press the exercise ball onto the page, that painting actually got chosen to go to New York to the Affordable Art Fair with PXP Contemporary Gallery. So cool things happen if you roll with it a little bit. We can always make these grand plans, but if we leave it open to, it usually turns out better. It's like making space. It's like meditating, making space, and things usually just gifts come into that space. And if we overplan and over predict, and if we have these expectations, usually you're let down. So why not, do it the other way? It's way more fun. It's way more fun. Kids have really taught me to roll with it, especially having 3 energetic boys. And our guest today, actually, before I say that, so that collection, the Taylor collection, go check it out at brandyhofer.ca. It is I don't know what's going on. I just sold 4 from my collector, Robin, who runs the Saskatchewan Network for Art Collecting. If you had your eye on any of originals, I would go get them. I have been shipping like a queen, and feels good because there were years where I was painting to heal, so I painted a lot. I'm very prolific when it comes to creating, whether it be writing and or painting or anything like that. It's just like a part of me, and I love it. It's the easiest part of everything I do. And so, yeah, there were a lot of years where I was painting really, really hard, and I'm grateful I did, because like my skill levels got better, and I figured out things I heal about myself, and I took that time to heal. Is a great way to meditate in a way, and it feeds your soul. So I'm grateful for that. And like Ellie Milan says, the founder of the Milan Institute, she said, if you don't have 40 or more pieces, you're not in the game. So that made me feel better about having an abundance of art. But now it's tipping the scales, because I've worked so hard in the writing realm, and and the podcast and the community, and I haven't quite been doing that as much, which I don't mind. I needed a break, and so now I'm just like, shit, I'm running out of stuff. I'm not. It's fine, and it's all a season, and this one's been a fun one, so thank you for being here. You're really going to enjoy our conversation today with Jeff, best-selling author, and so many other things, and he is someone I admire and look up to. He also has multiple children and has run a business and followed his dreams and pivoted and switched careers, and this one will make you feel good. It's really motivating. Jeff's really well spoken, and I certainly fucked up the record, which was hilarious. Jeff talked for like 23 beautiful minutes, and I made him start over. So here you go. Here, you're gonna start off with that. Back in, the recording wasn't still going. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
That whole thing
was so good.
That whole thing.
Oh my gosh, no.
You weren't kidding about a raw podcast.
Yeah. Sorry, Jeff.
No worries.
Oh no.
Is it that whole thing?
The whole yeah.
Okay.
So it would have been the second time we came in. Yeah, we're starting over.
Okay.
Fuck.
I booked off the whole day for you, just so you know. So.
Did you?
That's all right.
Okay. Never happened.
I didn't see a little recording sign there. I'm like, should I say something to her?
Yes,
I'm like,
you should have.
She's the professional. She's the one that has the podcast. She knows what she's doing.
I screw up lots of times.
That's good.
Okay, so now
from the top.
You will really, and I'm keeping this in here. So I messed up. Jeff was telling the most beautiful story, and I was not recording.
Let's do it again.
Okay, we'll be really good at it this time.
Yes, we better be.
Very streamlined. And okay, Jeff is here, and he's a best-selling author and entrepreneur. Now I can introduce you without the awkward, like I made you introduce yourself last time.
Which I really appreciated.
Yeah, just embarrassing. Sorry. I know Jeff on a personal level because we're actually neighbors, which is really cool. And we always hang out on the street. Everyone hangs out on the street with their multiple children. There's so many children here. And it's hard to repeat yourself, but we're going to do it. We're going to do it without talking about it too much. So I was in the throes of motherhood. I just had Teddy. And speaking of burnout, that's actually when my family, and we just spoke of burnout, but I'm going to speak about it. That's when my partner and I were like, when we had our third child, we were burning out hard. So I was just trying to like keep afloat with like just selling paintings. And here we go. Just selling paintings and like not sleep through the night. Now I'm getting.
I can't hear you again.
What I think the recording is causing the feedback, and that's when the feedback.
I'll tell you what, we have literally got nothing up to this point. Why don't we just both exit and go back in? That seemed to work the first time.
I'll just there. I'm not feedbacking, but the vacuum's going behind me, so that sucks.
This one sucker.
Hello. There we go. We're good.
We have to do this before I start sweating. So
I also sweat.
focus up.
Like talk to anyone ever, even in this. So don't feel like you're not alone. Okay, so I was in the throes of motherhood, and we were all on the street. You weren't there, but you were featured by our local papers because you had written this amazing book, and you were about business management, but you were also so you're best-selling author and featured by Forbes, which I want to talk to you about more about that and how that happened too later on. And I was, for some reason, I wasn't thinking about writing. I'm not an author. And I was, for some reason, really jealous of Jeff for writing a book and being successful. And I'm like, why? But then I went back into like, doing what we do and like struggling with our children and trying to keep afloat with I was running a business from home, and my partner also runs and owns actually a similar business to what you're involved in. So a home building, I always call it the wood store. So sorry.
Wood store. It's very technical. Yes.
It's not, it's like a home building supply, whatever, Yeah. Anyway, so jealousy. I want you to talk about jealousy. It's not a bad word. It's what keeps you like in check of like, so it's telling you somewhere inside that you want to be doing what that person is doing in a way, like a good way.
Yeah. So for the third or fourth time now, thanks for having me on your show. So I think there's a difference between jealousy and envy. I think jealousy in the right context can be a good thing. It can motivate you. It can bring awareness to things that maybe you didn't know resided in you. Envy, I think, is the toxic version of that. It's the excess. So when I was in an authoring social media group, and when I was going through the process of writing my book, I found jealousy to be a good thing. It did motivate me. There was a lot of times when I did not want to get up, 2 hours before everybody else. I was jealous of the people sleeping in the bed, but I was also jealous of the people that had the books coming out and, overcame that next big hurdle. And to me, that was actually the fuel that got me out of bed and got me into the coffee shop at 6 o'clock in the morning. So I think that's a good thing. I think jealousy is also an opportunity to bring awareness to things that you didn't know were inside you. So maybe you woke up that morning and you saw the article or you heard about what the neighbors were saying, and all of a sudden you're like, maybe I want to write a book. So I think that's really healthy. I have caught myself being envious. When there are some of my author friends have launched a successful business and I've restarted my course 3 times because I keep taking it in a different direction based on the feedback of my clients and things like that. I'm kind of jealous that they're here and I'm here. So I think the main difference between jealousy and envy is, how is it affecting you? Is it being used for good, or is it being for you to be productive, or is it wasting your time, wasting your energy? Is it causing getting that blood pressure up? There's a really great saying that envy is the thief of joy. So I think that is something that I had put on a Post-it note at one point. So when I would see a social media post and I was jealous, but then I started stalking their whole Facebook page and going through everything. I'm like, hey, now this is envy. This isn't good. And I think it's really important that you just can have that self-awareness, check in with yourself. And when you feel like it's no longer serving a purpose, you got to, cut ties from that.
Mm-hmm. Being conscious of your time and your energy and where you're putting it.
100%.
So many things. And it's like a suck hole can take us there, especially these days. Like, it's right at our fingertips. It's so triggering. So being conscious of where you're putting your time and energy on your device, and is it moving me in the right direction? Right.
Yeah. And, I think sometimes jealousy can also bring you back to your values to a certain degree, because there are times where I have gone the other way. I mean, even after I wrote the book, where I'm now working on my course, and my second book, which will be kind of an extension of that, where I'm on my way to a coffee shop at 9 o'clock at night, and I drive by all the kids in our driveway that are playing, and I'm like, you know what? I'm kind of jealous of the parents that are playing with their kids right now, and that is on more than one occasion said, you know what? I'm actually not going to do that tonight. I'm going to come back, play video games with the kids, or we'll, have a fire in the backyard or something like that. So I think it can be used for good in different avenues, not just, for one sole purpose.
Yeah. And what I love about that is kind of the universe and the world saying, you know what, you need to take space, you need to slow down, you need to spend time with your family, and then you'll have more energy and more, excitement when you do get that time to yourself, when you do get to work on the things you want to do. That's what I kind of love about the balance of parenthood and having ambitions and dreams and running your own business or practice, is because they kind of force you to check in with being present in the moment. And that's what kids are so good at. Yes.
I mean, I think we could all just they take up a lot of time, they take up a lot of energy, but I think more often than not, if we listened a little more to our kids, we could probably take some valuable lessons out of the day-to-day from them.
Oh yeah. They've of course affected my personal practice with freedom and expression, and then just being outside in general. I don't think I would be I get outside now 4 to 6 hours a day, which I wouldn't normally do. And we all know that's really good for you.
Yeah.
I want to talk about your personal journey and how you got to where you are, because it's over a span of 15 years or more.
It's a bit of a saga.
Where you started. I've heard about it already
3
today
times this morning.
And actually, so after I was jealous of Jeff, it took me a while to realize I wanted to write a book. Actually, my baby Teddy had just learned Strider and went through Jeff's driveway, and he started talking to me, and I realized that I could just ask Jeff. Jeff was like, "Oh, I heard you're doing this and doing that, and I love what you're doing here." And then I started asking you questions, and you were so open and so generous with your time and answers. I think we stood there for half an hour geeking out. And then to follow up on that, we've had lots of coffees and talk for hours and geeked out really hard.
Yeah.
So that's why I brought you on, because I feel such a great connection and flow when we chat. And so I've heard Jeff's journey, but I want everyone here listening to hear it too, because I think each of our journeys is really a building block to the foundation of where we were meant to be. And what I love about part of your story is if you hadn't done some of it, your life would never be the same, how you met your partner and all of that. So go for it again for the second time today.
And then one more in French after that. Actually, just I just want to touch on one thing before I jump into my story. I read a really good book in the spring. It's called Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. I'm not sure if you read that
after
book.
You told me to read it, I started listening to it. It's one of the 4 I'm listening to at once. But
it's a fantastic book, because when in the moment, oftentimes you don't feel like you are making the right decision, or you're wondering why this thing's happening to you. And I've told the story, many times, but when I read this book, the gist of the story is that throughout his whole life, there's things that seem like red lights, but they're actually green lights, and it's actually the universe pushing you in the right direction. And there's some things that he thought was green lights, but they're actually red lights, and maybe you had to pivot. So it was just really funny when I was reading this book. I like to highlight in my book, and I highlighted just about the entire book because I felt like everything just resonated with me on a level here. But yeah, so with my story, out of high school, I thought I was going to become an architect. I decided I was going to give engineering a shot. My parents kind of pushed me in that direction. Didn't really know what it was, but I thought, sounds like they get to do cool things. Sounds like they get to travel. Sounds like they make a lot of money. So why not? But after my first year of university for general engineering, I passed. It had a 70% failure rate. I did pass, but I was really questioning if that was right for me. But, everyone told me, well, first year is just trying to weed out all the people, give second year a shot, because in second year, it's actually your first year of whatever branch you want to go into. So I went into civil engineering my second year, and I did not care for it. And I thought this might not be for me. And again, my parents and my peers were saying, well, maybe civil engineering isn't for you. Why don't you give a different, branch a shot? So the third year I came back and I restarted my second year, going into mechanical engineering. And by that point, I'm 3 years invested. I'm getting decent grades. I'm passing everything, but I'm like, this just does not feel like me. Just the culture, the people, they're all great people. It's an awesome profession for a lot of people, but it just wasn't for me. So I really had to do kind of some soul searching that summer, and where my friends were starting to get intern positions with engineering companies, I had to do a 180. I literally said, I want to be as far away from a computer and math and people and all that stuff. And so I ended up getting a job at a business in town here, a home hardware, home improvement center. And I was hired on as a delivery driver, which sounded great. It was be in the sunshine, physical activity. And I had some friends that were working there. So it was an amazing summer. But that was also the summer that I met my wife, because she was working there, and we got talking, and then I realized a little, few weeks into it, that this was actually my boss's daughter. So you do what any 20-year-old does. You go for it and you start dating your boss's daughter. So
Yeah.
that's a whole nother story for another time. But it did work out. But I did end up completing my engineering course over the next 3 years. But every summer I would come back and go back to that store, and I would learn a different part of the business. So one year it was in the yard, then it was on the lumber sales desk, and then it was on the floor. And then by that point I was taking on some managerial roles and kind of learning about the back end of the business. And before I graduated university, I did make the decision, like, hey, I'm closer to finishing than starting over. So I'll get my degree, which I did. And then I also kind of determined I do in fact want to be an entrepreneur. My dad was an entrepreneur, so it is in our blood. But I'm like, instead of going back to school and going into commerce and all that, which I had definitely, the novelty of university had certainly worn off at that point, I decided it was best to just get firsthand experience and learn how to run a business. So, so against conventional wisdom, I shelved the engineering degree, and I never looked back. Now, I'd be lying if I said the next few years were just, perfect, because I thought they would be. I took a bit of a jump into the unknown, but it was something that I knew I was passionate about and I loved. But the next few years were pretty intense. Like so many entrepreneurs, I brought into this notion that to be successful, you had to work really hard. You had to wear all of the hats in your business. You had to basically do everything and be everything for everyone all the time. But I was burning the candle at both ends. And, I reached a point where I no longer felt successful. So I was working around the clock, stamping out fires, micromanaging my team, because that's what I thought you did. I'd come home stressed out and completely drained, to the point that I couldn't even play with my children, like my daughter at that point. And my personal life was basically non-existent. So I had this aha moment at some point that, I had essentially become my own best employee and the business was running me. So I kind of tried to push through that as best I could. But in 2008, so maybe 3 years after I graduated, my life changed forever. My wife and I welcomed my daughter into the world, and our first kid. And then just within a few months after that, we had to say goodbye to my sister, who passed away unexpectedly to complications of Crohn's disease. And, we were all absolutely devastated. So,
of course.
Yeah. So here I am, a new father who's dealing with this immense loss. I'm trying to be here for my parents, my wife, my daughter, still trying to keep the family business going on top of that. And, I worked really hard to try and keep it all together, but I just hit a point where I completely broke down. And
how could you? Yeah. We experienced similar, tragedies at the same time. And yeah, my husband totally, and I've talked about this before, so I know it's okay to mention.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because he's talked about it. Yeah. Like a total, like I've never seen him, but yeah, like, so he lost his father and all of a sudden he has this whole business,
right?
And then a full family, everyone leaning on one person, but also grief, demands to be felt.
100%. And at that time, you feel like the best thing you can do is not acknowledge it. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I'm going to just keep being the strong person for my family. I'm going to be keeping the strong person for our employees in the business. But, everyone's got a breaking point. And, I hit rock bottom. I developed crippling anxiety. We have no well, at the time, I didn't realize maybe, with mental health issues, it wasn't really something it was really in full focus and people talked about,
No,
15
and
years
you know
ago.
what? Everyone talks about like right now, like it's very focused on, as it should be, like gender gap and things for women and what time has done, but also a product of that, our like parents' generation, is men aren't allowed to feel.
Right.
Men aren't allowed to show weakness. Men aren't allowed to, have anxiety
Be
or
human.
be tired. Yeah, be human. And it's just not, it's not realistic. And
Well, and it was very bizarre because, like I said, I had never experienced a panic attack before in my life, and I had never seen, and I didn't even know what it was, to be honest. So I'm waking up and I feel like I'm actually going to die. Like
oh my
they
God.
say impending doom, I think is the definition of a panic attack. And it's no joke. I mean, you don't know what's wrong with you, and you feel like
Oh
you're going
gosh.
crazy, but you also feel like you're actually physically, your body's shutting down. So it was pretty scary. And I had depression for a while, and I got to a point where I just didn't feel like myself, obviously, but I had allowed myself to grieve, probably not as much as I should have, but I also knew I had to make some big changes in my life regardless, because it wasn't just the death of my sister. That was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. There was so much build up to that. So I knew I needed to improve my health, but I also wanted to improve my life. I knew I wanted to be happy. I wanted to come to work feeling inspired. I wanted to do things that energized me. I was coming to work, for so long where it was like, okay, what are we dealing with today? And
You were resentful of,
well, yeah,
and you
yeah,
shouldn't feel that way when like so many people would be so grateful to be, in the position
for sure. And it's even with you, like, I'm not an artist, but I mean, I could imagine if you have a canvas that's half completed and you want to just get that finished and you're really excited for it, or you're waiting to start a mural, but you can't because you're so stuck in a different part of the business. You can't even really feel passionate about that because your eyes are constantly focused on that other thing you want to be doing. And you want to do it, you just can't physically find the time or the energy or the mentality to do it. So yeah, I knew I wanted to just come to work feeling really good and energized. But also outside of work, I wanted to spend more time with my friends and my family. I wanted to take some time for myself, which sounded super selfish back then, but we all need that. And, through trial and error, I was able to figure everything out and get my life back on track. But it's funny because when I reflect back on it, it turned out the key that kind of unlocked everything was to develop people and systems that would allow the business to essentially run itself so I could work less and live more. Now, it sounds impossible, but it is possible. You just have to kind of find your push off point and then work towards that. So that was kind of the first part of the story. And that's kind of at that point, that's when I wrote my book. Now, the second part of the story happens a decade later. After I developed the framework, I turned it into a best-selling book. In 2018, my parents went on a trip to Las Vegas to celebrate their wedding anniversary. And on the last day of their vacation, my dad has a heart attack in the airport and dies. So once again, incredibly shocking, incredibly devastating.
Of course, yeah.
And it was also really tragic because he was honestly just like 3 or 4 months away from retirement. And
oh my gosh.
he was actually supposed to retire a year before that. But they kept him on board for kind of a succession planning thing. And he was happy doing it. He wasn't working as hard as he had been, but I had encouraged him to do traveling and things for a long time. And, but anyway, yeah, so this happened just a few months before he retired. So, when I'm looking at, in the rearview mirror, my sister passed away when she was 25, thinking she had her whole life ahead of her. My dad, who again was an entrepreneur, he worked 7 days a week for 40 years because that's what you did back then. He passes away just shy of his retirement. And for me, the writing is like on the wall. Life is short. There are no guarantees, and there's no perfect time to live, your dream life, because when you're when you're young, you have less money. And when you're old, you have less time and your energy. And that's just the way it is.
Right.
So there is a silver lining to all of this. Obviously, we have an opportunity to fix things that are standing in our way. But we have to do it now because that's the only time we really have. And again, in that book, Green Lights, they really emphasize that, that was something that really resonated with me. And so, you know, that's my mission. That's my passion. I think that's why I was put on this earth. Everything, all the challenges, all the obstacles, why me? I think that this is all built up to this point where, you know, I'm here to help overwhelmed entrepreneurs make those necessary pivots in their business so they can, you know, truly build a life they love. And
Mm-hmm.
and the one thing that I just want to kind of get out of the way, because it does come up from time to time, people say, well, you know, this dream life, what's a dream life anyway? And I really want to make the clarification that dream life is not a perfect life. A perfect life is when nothing bad happens, everything goes right, and that is a completely unrealistic expectation anyone should have.
Mark Manson says in his book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck,
Yes.
and I quote this all the time, is that everything sucks some of the time. You
Yes.
just have to decide what do you want to be doing when the suckery happens? Like, that's it.
100%.
Like, what can you keep doing when some of the stuff like hits the fan, and what can you be like, well, that was just a road bump, and
And
bump in the
you know,
road, and I'll just, you know, keep focused on the other good things that are going on in this business,
right.
or whatever you're doing.
Even the Navy SEALs, they have a saying says, "Embrace the suck." Like, it's going to happen. Just
For
deal
sure.
with it. So a dream life isn't a perfect life. What a dream life is looking back at the end of your life and saying, "I have no regrets. I don't feel bad about, you know, taking that chance, even if it didn't work out, because, you know, what if that didn't happen and I have to live my whole life of regret, right?
What if you didn't go to engineering school and were so burnt out you took a job as a truck driver? You wouldn't have the life you're living. Like,
for sure. And honestly,
even with
engineering, you know, I have zero regrets going there because it gave me an incredible work ethic. And it just to see things objectively and differently and meet some great people along the way. So so anyway, so that's the story. It's still unfolding. And, you know, at some point, you know, when I have when I wrote the book, which I know we can talk about in a second, but when I wrote the book, I realized that I wanted it also to be a bit of a series of life lessons for my kids. So that was also part of the reason why I wrote the book. Not that I expected them to read it or necessarily use it, but it was just kind of a way to compile all my thoughts at the time.
Yeah. What I love about your book is it's about business management. And so for someone like me who like will pick a book up like called Big Magic, because it's just for creatives. But if I want to expand my practice, and I have, into like, I'm just, as soon as it happens, I'm so excited. So author, I'm calling myself an author already. Okay.
Call it now.
I'm an author, educator, muralist. Like, that is a business. That is, and I was just attending the business awards last night, and I'm like, you know, it's really hard. Even my own partner was like, but are you a business? And I was like, of course. I was fucking mad when he said that.
Awkward drive home.
It is. No, not last night he said that. Oh. He said that when I was nominated. Because,
I see. Yeah.
And you know what? That's what your partners are for. They're for you to get pissed off and be like, because someone might say that to me later on, or how am I considered a business? And people might not understand, because the majority of what I do is online. I don't have like somewhere where people can walk up into the thing and get a service. Like, but what about what I'm doing is not a service, like mentorship, all that stuff. It just isn't like a physical thing. So I need people to expand my business, and I need to hire a staff, and it's not going to look the same for everyone, of course. But what I love about your book, and I zipped right through it because it's so approachable, and it's applicable for everyone. Everyone can take something away if you want to listen to it. Or I like physically, like you, picking up something like this and making notes in it. And or pictures, or circling and highlighting, and you talk about your family, and you talk about like right away, really inspiring. That's connecting the dots. You probably know this like inside out, but it talks about mindset and all of those great things, which are so important, and so many people kind of bypass. They don't think about how important those things are, manifesting and mindset. And so when I bring up manifesting, you weren't a believer, correct? And like too much, and you were taking the course. And what did you write down? Like, I love this story.
Geez, I'm trying to remember what I wrote down now.
You told
me?
me this once. I can tell it.
Oh, you tell it. I can't even remember.
So your wife and her sister are very into like universal intelligence and and stuff like that, right? And then part of your book writing, was it a class or a course when you were in with other authors?
Yeah.
So they did a manifesting exercise, and you only wrote down one thing. I thought it was to be featured on Forbes.
Oh, yes. Okay, I know where you're going with this now.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, worst interview ever.
It's not. It's so great.
No, okay. Well, this is okay. Yeah. So there's actually it wasn't my my authoring course. I actually took a publicity course, and which is funny because I really like to learn, and where I personally excel is learning things and not applying them. So it's just like a hobby of mine. I love learning. So I took this publicity course almost immediately after my book came out, because I was thinking I'm going to do all these press releases. I'm going to do all these podcasts, all of these things. And part of the course they said, well, name 5 things that you want to be featured. And the only place that I could honestly think of was I want Forbes, right? I don't want anything else. I mean, I would, and I would be grateful for it, but I wasn't going to actively pursue it. I just wanted to actively pursue Forbes. So that actually happened. I put that in there, and then this was actually right around the time when my father passed away. So a lot of that stuff ended up getting put on the back burner, and I didn't pursue the publicity for some time. And but what was funny is I just on Amazon, and I have a few different dashboards for different platforms, but I was just like looking through randomly, and my book sales just shot right through the roof, and I'm like, that seems super, super odd. And I have decent book sales every day, but this was like way above and beyond anything I would have expected. And I don't make a habit of Googling myself, but I had to figure out what was going on here.
Why was going on in the stats?
And so I Googled myself, which I can't even believe I'm saying that. But right at the top was my book was featured in Forbes as a top read for 2020. And what was incredible about the whole thing was I literally, up to that point, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't really get too far into the manifestation. I believed in mindset, and I believed in, making sure you're physically and mentally prepared for challenges and all that. But it just put it in something out in the universe seemed a little at the time wonky for me. I'm a believer now though, because that was completely unsolicited. Someone came a copy. I hadn't done any interviews up to that point. I hadn't done any publications or press releases or anything. This contributor for Forbes literally just had a copy of my book for, I still don't know how, loved it, and put it in there. So that you literally couldn't have asked for anything better in terms of that, which is funny because I had this whole binder and exercises of all these things I had to do to try and get into Forbes good book. It just happened. So just went, whoop, just put that thing to the side there. And I'm just going to manifest from now on. That's all I need to do.
That's kind of, you had it together though. Like you put the steps together. That's manifesting too. Like this 100%. Is what I see happening and I want it to happen. And sometimes you have to be really, and I talk about this too with, not really a lot on the podcast, but with a lot of my online friends and community and my studio manager, is we are all very into manifesting because it's so weird. Like I can't explain it and it works, but you also have to be very careful because it can go in a different way. Sometimes better, but sometimes not.
Yeah.
And like, it can be so simple, but like, if you're just like, I need more money, you might get like $5 that day. Like you have to be really specific. And a good example this year is what happened to me is I want to be featured by the Jealous Curator, who is this really big woman in the art world. And I had written her a really special testimonial because she had asked like should I keep sending these daily newsletters to our society? And I was like, hell yes, you should. This is like, I told her what it meant to me. I'm like, this is, you succeeding is like a path for other women. And I just put my heart and soul into this testimonial. She ended up featuring the testimonial,
That's
but
incredible.
she features art.
Yeah,
So
that's amazing.
my manifest for the year, I was like, that's so great, but I really wanted the art to be,
Yeah.
you
But
know?
you know what? Going back to that book, and I'm going to keep talking about green lights. I mean, I think the universe pushes you in directions in such subtle ways sometimes, and sometimes it's obvious. But what was really funny was the Forbes article came out after my dad's passing. And so what was funny was after that, I kind of stopped putting the message out there. I'm like, well, I got some book sales. I did what I wanted to do. And, you know, and this was like just literally on the cusp of COVID within a month of when it really kind of took over. I think it was featured in January. And so I was like, okay, this is the universe telling me not to give up. We're not done yet. This is just the beginning. So even though I had manifested it a year and a half earlier, sometimes I also think when you manifest something, you think it's like, okay, I want an immediate result. Like you said, I want money. So where's my $5? But sometimes that $5 won't come for 6 months or a year from now until when you really need it. Right.
Yeah.
So,
Divine timing. Divine timing.
100%. Yeah, for sure.
I did redo my manifest though. I wrote it down. I would like my art to be featured by the Jealous Curator. And it was not in the way I thought it would be.
Yeah.
But this last week, I think, or the week before, it actually happened. Yeah. So like, even if you fuck up your manifest, you get a redo.
There are no rules when it comes to manifesting.
There are no rules. And it was in the way of like, my gallery was featured after we all went to New York. So it was like in a more beautiful, amazing way. And I think when you leave room and space for not like having such control or tightness over it, and you leave a little space for it to become, it can be better than you think. Like sometimes things can turn out in this really special way that was way more important and impactful than you even envisioned.
Yes.
And that's when you leave space for others and opportunities and yeah. So
I think that's a big part of mindset too, though, because I remember I wrote it I used it in my book, but it was an analogy I heard a long time ago about, imagine you're standing in a river, and if you're standing in a river and the water is coming at you and you're facing the current and you're trying to hold it back, you're going to get swept away. But if you turn yourself sideways and you allow everything to flow around you, you can be very grounded in where you're at. So I think when you're talking about manifestation, I think there's also a big difference between manifestation and expectations, right? Because you'll with manifestation, what I've learned is you really do need to, it has to come from a super humble place, and you have to be okay if it doesn't happen, right? And I found since the Forbes thing, you know, there's been a few really notable instances in my life that I'm like, it's so odd that this happened, because I was just thinking about this, and I didn't have a manifestation journal, but it was just something that I kind of put out there in the universe, and I let it go, and it came back to you, right?
It can be a conversation with someone. It can be writing it down. It can just be simply thinking it or saying it out loud, or like say, this is a really good way, is like you were in like a meditation or making space, or just like that time right before you fall asleep, like something can cross your mind because you made the space, and then it just all of a sudden comes, and you're like, oh, okay, and then you're like, well, maybe like it happens. I have so many stories, and recently, because I've been much more open to it, like I was standing on the street in New York, and my friend Juliana, who also is a big manifester, she's like, what is your favorite thing to eat? And I had trouble in New York because I'm dairy-free, gluten-free. And I was like, I really love Italian. I love Italian. And so she's like, okay. And we're just kind of like staring around. And then 0.3 kilometers right around the corner was the Italian market. So like literally so simple. And then 2 weeks ago, I was talking to my sister on the phone. She's also a local business owner.
So we always like hash things out. Like you can never discount local community and like hashing out other businesses things together, because something always comes out of it, like similarly to what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
But I was telling her about this large scale commission I had done and how it was so great, and I was having a good time, and everyone knows, I've said it a million times, so burnt out from doing the small stuff. And so I was like, I would love to do more large scale, like female portrait commissions. Lo and behold, get an email from a woman in Texas. Can you do a 60 by 60 inch portrait of me? I love the one you did for Sarah Baumler. It's in her Florida office. I want something. Can you do that one for me? I was just like, well, I can't do that, but I certainly can figure something out. It's like, drink the Kool-Aid, everyone.
Yeah.
I'm
and it's
telling
funny,
you.
one of the biggest things that I struggled with, and I'm sure you experience this as well, either as an up and rising artist or, when you're authoring your book or your podcast or anything like that. One of the most influential books that I read in my whole life was Big Magic, like you said, which again is for content creation. It's got nothing to do with business, and yet it's got everything to do with business. And the thing that really stuck out with me was imposter syndrome. And I'm like, who am I to write this stupid book? And who am I to be telling people, what to do with their businesses and their lives? And, obviously they touch on manifestation, but I think the big thing is just putting everything out into the universe, and, not to get, too, artsy fartsy, but I mean, the thing is, I think to a certain degree, the universe probably has multiple plans for you. It's just a matter of which one are you more going to resonate with, and you're going to listen when it knocks on your door. Because in engineering, what was really funny is we had a couple of ideas at the end of your third and fourth year. You have to do these design projects, and they're real clients, they're real design projects. And then when they choose the best project, they'll choose whether or not they want to go ahead with it. What was really funny was we ended up designing, doesn't matter, it was this kind of technical nerdy thing, but they ended up putting a couple of patents on it. And they ended up not going ahead with it after they patented it. And somebody else bought the patent and did something amazing with it. I don't actually know. It was something to do with the turbine and everything else, but we had nothing to do with it. I mean, we didn't see any success out of that because we were just the students, and that's part of the gig. But it just goes to show you too, if you don't.
That sucks.
No, it was fine. It was fine, but it all worked out. But my point was, sometimes you have these ideas that are sitting in your lap, and they'll maybe come around a couple of times. But if you don't want to, if you're not going to take a hold of it, then it'll go find somebody else. Do you know what I mean? So
she does. She talks about that so much, and kind of like how she was okay with it. Like, you're just like, that wasn't my path, and it's someone else's. You do have to catch it. You do have to, and that goes with, like, say you do have something that crosses your mind as you're falling asleep. You got to write that shit down, because you'll forget. It's
funny. That's how my book came to be. I at this point was toying around with this idea of writing a book, but I'm like, there's so many business books out there. It's the most saturated market that exists. And so I'm like, well, never mind imposter syndrome, and how do you write something that sounds unique, even though every business book basically goes off of the same 10 principles from 200 years ago. So how do you stand out? And it was really funny because I had all these ideas in my brain, and I had already kind of more or less completed my journey. And I was laying in bed, putting my son to bed, and it was like literally lightning into my brain. It was like, clone yourself, talk about that. And I had to get up, write it down. He woke up. It was worth it. And I literally had to write it down, and I was writing it down so fast because I already had like 5 or 6 chapters. I'm like, yeah, I can talk about this and this and this and this and this. And then that's how the birth of that, came to be. Had to put Bailey back to bed, but from there it was like, yeah. So it's not only just grabbing that idea, but also not letting it go and not giving up.
Exactly. You know what is so funny? Sorry, I'm just texting my husband to pick up Teddy. Get Teddy. I have no idea where my phone is, so I'm using my watch. There we go. Yeah, so that's again like what I love about having kids is like a lot of times the little kids, you have to sit, not by choice, in a dark room with like a sound machine on.
Yeah.
For like 10 minutes to an hour.
Yeah.
And that is just like a great time for your brain to rest, and where like that meditation key comes in, that you should do it daily. And everyone says you should. And it's so funny, these things that come into our lives. When you said the business book, I think I have like a 60-year-old copy of A Man Thinketh, and that's just like another motivational, like Jen Sincero talks about that book, and I just grabbed it out of, in Halifax when I lived in university, out of this like used thing, and I was like, As a Man Thinketh, what is that even? And then after Jen Sincero talked about it, I was like, I have like the oldest copy ever of that book somewhere. And so I read it, and it of course is like from a male perspective, but like, again, it's just like the first self-help book. Yeah. It's so cool.
And I think like that's actually why I started my book. When you go in there's a little brief introduction, and I jump right in. The very first chapter is reset your mindset. Yeah. Because I feel that is, if you don't have the right mindset, you're already setting yourself up for success or failure before you even do anything.
It's so you gotta shake that away. And I think when it comes to you and I think death and loss and grief kind of just fucking shake that away.
Oh, 100%. And it really makes you question, are you like I'm an extrovert for the most part. So I'm generally confident in communicating with people and sharing ideas, even when they're not solicited. But when you get to those low moments, you're questioning your deepest, darkest core, right? And that's why, again, Big Magic was so important in my life, because I didn't know what imposter syndrome was until I had somebody define it. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a real thing. This isn't just doubt or lack of confidence. This is like, but it's a mindset. And
so many people suffer from it. That's one of my top podcasts, is when we talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah.
And I think the pandemic and what the last few years everyone went through, I think that was also a way to shake all the fruit off the tree for some people.
For sure.
It's a gift. It's a gift.
And I was going to just say with resetting your mindset, like for me, one of the most important things that I ever learned with resetting your mindset is the number one thing that separates winners from losers is the relationship with failure. And so I'm like, okay, when I read that, I can't remember even where I came across that. I was like, that was such a aha moment for me, because I'm like, we know everybody fails, right? And there's all the motivational quotes that are on Instagram and things like that. But when you actually think about your own personal true failures, it's a lot harder to rise above that than you think you could, come out of that, or to even say it. I could say, oh yeah, I overcame my failures. It's fine to talk about it after the fact, but when you're in that dark, deep, moment, it really is up to you and nobody else. How am I going to handle that failure? But one thing that I also realized, and this was kind of all these emotional, thought and, things I was thinking about as I was getting closer to publishing my book, because I was scared to publish a book. I'm like, what if it sucks? what if, I'm going to put myself out here. It's
for me, I'm just like, what if there's mistakes in it and we didn't catch them?
Exactly, and that's how it was.
Like that. Yeah.
But then I thought, okay, well, what's the worst that can happen? And so if you can manage your expectations a little bit and realize, oh, it's not as bad as you think it is, or what's the worst that can happen, and then what happens after that. If you can figure that kind of stuff out, a lot of the scary stuff goes away. And in the book authoring group that I was in, there was a kind of a famous quote from the founder, and he basically said that as a worst case scenario, my crappy book is better than the one you don't have. And so, and I was like, hey, you know what? That actually is such a weight off my chest, because it's easy for people to critique anything when you don't have skin in the game. Right. So I think if there's things that, where you can clarify your expectations with yourself, you can manage them. You can, lean into failure. You're not afraid of it, and change your relationship with it. And then honestly, just keep your mind focused on the end and just keep going. And another really important quote in my life was, it's okay to fail. It's okay to rest. It's okay to acknowledge your feelings, but it's not okay to quit. Right. So that was the original quote, or some variation of that. But I do have a caveat to that, because I think it's okay to quit if you're quitting for the right reasons. For example, engineering, right?
Yeah.
If you follow your heart, you're like, hey, I feel like, I really need to do this for myself, then I don't really see that as quitting. I see that as pivoting. And I think there's a big difference there.
For sure. Like sometimes things just they don't work. They're not working, and you have to acknowledge how it's making you feel and where you feel it in your body and how it's impacting your life.
Yes.
There's a big difference. And I think another tool that people can take away is like what your why. So why you're doing the things you're doing. And if you think about it in that way, it's not as scary. Why are you doing it? Who are you doing it for? Is it above and beyond yourself? And if you think of yourself as a conduit for, like, say, if you're going to speak about your book or you wrote your book, you're a conduit for that information that is going to help other people. Whether they can take it or they can leave it, that's really none of your business.
Yeah.
But what you can do, it could help one person, it could help 500,000. You just don't know. But if you never do it, you just have to. It's not.
It's funny that you say that because you were talking when you're talking about my book earlier, saying it's really simple and straightforward. It's funny because
probably took you a long time to get it to simple and straightforward.
Yeah, well, no,
right?
but there's all kinds of quotes that when you look at whether it's Elon Musk or Richard Branson or Steve Jobs, they all kind of have the same philosophy that it's very difficult to make things simple. And it's really funny because fans of the book, the book has received lots of love, lots of praise over the years. But it's funny because the fans of the book love its simplicity, and the critics of the book dislike it because of its simplicity. So I think it's just amusing that you have these polar perspectives on it, but they're actually still agreeing on the same thing. And it's just funny to me because I love reading business books. I've probably read over 100 of them in my life, but they're always filled with case studies that didn't apply to my situation. I find them like super inspiring, but they weren't overly actionable. You'd be like, this is amazing, and then you get to the end, and you're like, what am I supposed to do? And so it was very important to me when I set out to write Clone Yourself. I wanted to create a book that was simple. It was a roadmap that people could follow. It was straightforward. It took out all of the fluff. And that's kind of what I was worried about, because I'm like, well, this doesn't feel like your standard business book. It doesn't, it's still 200 and something pages, but it's not like a Bible, and it's not the tiniest font, and doesn't have a bazillion, case studies of top, Fortune 500 companies. But I'm like, that's what I actually want. I want a book that I would read and I could get something out of, and just strip away all the fluff and just the things that people can actually take away from, regardless of their industry or their size. And that's what I did.
And you weren't doing it to impress anyone. Like, do you know what I mean? Exactly. It was for people.
Right.
It was a tool to help people. And there's a workbook that goes with the book too, so people can insert themselves. So it left space. And I think, it's not like I'm up here and you're down here. Right.
Yeah, actually, it really came from a place of giving. It was a place of sharing and saying, hey, listen, this is what, do I believe that this book is going to help everybody 100%? No. Do I think that a lot of the information is timeless? And even if you get 2 or 3 nuggets, are you better off for reading the book? Yeah, absolutely. So I don't think it's wise to think in absolutes, especially when it comes to telling anyone how to run their business or run their life. But if you can just share what worked for you, and it comes from a place of giving, people will pick up on that. And I think those are the people that are, the book was intended for in the first place. Right.
I have a chapter in my book. It's called Kindness Takes Less Energy.
Yes, I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
Put out good things, like, sometimes you get mad. Sometimes things people say or do, pisses you off. I've sworn a lot in this episode, but whatever. But sometimes you're just like, that's going to really steer the course of this day in the wrong direction. Like, can I just either not put my time there, or can I make this better somehow, or move on? And it takes a lot of time to get to that. I was always like a really reactive individual, and it has taken me so long to, but going through the process of writing that book and like having a story about it, and has been such a beautiful tool and helped me mature into, you know, the woman I am today, and helping other people. So it's just put good energy and give good energy to others, and I actually think you'll get it back in return.
For sure. And like there's been countless times where we've had a coffee or talked on the street, and I'm like, I don't want her to feel like I'm nagging her about her book and how's it coming. And I was genuinely interested and was rooting for you. But I think it's you know, a big part of, I think, good business practices, whether or, you know, even, you know, authoring a book and things like that. There's so much information that you have to learn. I mean, as you know, it's a steep learning curve, and there's a lot of things that you have to overcome. That, I mean, we talked about ISBN numbers. Like, how do I get that? I mean, it seems so complicated and so foreign, but it seems such a waste to hold on to that energy or hold on to that information. You know, I believe wholeheartedly, once you've accomplished some of that, pay it forward, give it back. It's like the universe, you know, rewarded you for is rewarding you for taking this idea, and, you know, you created something that you didn't think was possible. So why not give it back to somebody else? So yeah, giving and, you know, and just putting all that out there, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, mentorship and coaching is like a fast forward button.
Yes.
It's just like, it's always worth the time. It's always worth the money. It's always worth the energy if you find the right people. And just like, you know, something that took you years to learn, you can sit with me in 3 sessions and ta-da,
Right.
this is how I did it.
Yeah.
Although my book took me a long time, and you're going to have to show me again.
That resonates with the theme of this podcast, right? Just doing things over a couple of times. So
it will be better. I think it was better the second time we did it.
But honestly, this is where, you know, we started this the interview today with talking about jealousy. I mean, that is something that I've been battling for a long time, because when Clone Yourself came out, I was like, okay, I'm going to do everything. I'm going to have a video component to it, and like an online course, and I'm going to do these coaching, take on these coaching clients, and I'm going to do these podcasts. I'm going to do everything. And then I started burning myself out before I even kind of hit the ground running. And I'm like, what am I actually even doing here? As I was coaching through with some clients and going through the material in my book, I realized, oh, these things that I left out of the first book, you know, intentionally, are still valid parts of the business. So when I was looking at cloning yourself and the idea of, okay, you're going to have these people that can basically run the business for you, there was some more technical aspects of that, like strategic planning and things like that. There's also like, well, what happens next? You know, how, you know, once I have the business running the way I want, you know, what next? Because the reality is, a lot of people, if they don't fill that void with something else, they go right back to, you know, their old ways. So while I feel jealous from time to time when I see this happening, I know that the pivots that I've had to make are just a part of life. So have I started my course over 3 times? Yes. Am I well on my way? And do I feel confident where it's going now? Yes. So sometimes, you know, you do have to reset yourself or change direction a little bit, but that's, you know, probably the best thing. Maybe that's the universe telling you, you know, that path isn't for you. Go over here, even if it's going to, you know, you mean you have to. Can we just cut that part out?
Oh yeah, for sure.
I totally lost my train of thought. That's fine. Just scrap that out.
But now when you're thinking about it, you have the wherewithal and the knowledge that wasn't for you, and you have the, you know, the path that got you to where you are, and it may have taken a different direction, but it's more for you. Like, especially when now you know, like, and I think it's a gift too, because one-on-one, if that wasn't for you, like, one-on-one isn't really a sustainable thing if you're going for grand masses, and if you're going for something to accompany your book. Like, I do love a one-on-one too, and I closed it down for a really long time, and I opened it back up again because there were just a few people who just kept messaging me.
Yeah.
And they'll probably hear this, but there was no other, you know, I wanted to help them. So how can I help them further? So if it's like a natural thing, and and what I have found is that it's nurturing for both of us, and we're both actually, like, again, I'm not up here and they're not down here.
Right.
There is something that is a give-take relationship with these people, and I'm going to have a relationship now with them for a very long time. So I think along the way, we always learn what is working, and time, and the only way we can do that is with time.
Yeah, and I think not for me. Maybe there should be caveat that it's not me. It's not for me right now, right? So I think it's also a mistake to, like I just talked about earlier about thinking in absolutes. I don't think it's wise for anybody to say this will never happen or this is definitely going to happen. I think this is certainly a process, whether it's writing a book, having a family, running a business. You really do just kind of have to go with the flow a little bit. And I think that's more or less what, having that dream life is all about. Checking all the boxes that you want to check off while still, expecting things to go sideways sometimes, and still having that mindset that, yeah, I accept that this will happen, but I'm still going to make the best out of it.
Exactly. Okay, so life is happening clearly today.
I'm just happy my internet connection. If it went out one more time, I was going to just come over to your house here and we'll just do it in your because this is anyway. So
no, thank you for being here, Jeff. I appreciate it so much.
Well, thanks for having me, and
Where can everyone find you?
You can just honestly, if you just go to my website, jeffhilderman.com, or Google Clone Yourself, maybe Jeff behind it. It'll pop up, and on there's some free giveaway stuff if you're interested. Links to my book and all that. So
because with your book, they get audio too, right?
Yeah, if you get
and a workbook.
If you buy the book, you do actually get the audiobook for free. There's a link in the book there, and then there's a companion guide and some templates and things like that as well. So
yeah, it's great.
But thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for your time.
Friend, thank you so much for being here today. I sure do appreciate your time. Make sure you go check out Jeff's book, Clone Yourself, and follow him on all the things, and check out his website. And also, if you're not a member already, become a member of our community. Go to brandyhofer.ca and sign up for our newsletter, or send me a message. I'm happy to chat anytime. I love making friends online because it's just so cool. Social media is so cool that way, because I tell you, I get to just meet my soul sisters online. It is the best. And it has been the most rewarding part of this whole adventure. So also check out brandyhofer.ca. The collection, especially the Taylor collection, is just, if you had your eye on something, make sure you get it. And also you can check out our online classes, which we're working really hard on to make more, because the portrait class was so freaking popular and I need to do a follow-up. And but life, just coming back from, I had 3 events this week. Women in Business Award. I was nominated, not awarded. That's okay. I was happy to be there. It was amazing, beautiful night, because it was the first Women in Business annual award, which was very cool. Actually by our sponsor, Red Bicycle Communications, and also our other sponsor, Nouveau Laser and Aesthetic Center, who have made me feel so darn good about myself and have been on this self-care healing journey that has actually changed my life. They were also nominated for the Women in Business Award, and Lindsay actually took it home from Can Do Auto, and she was a boss. It was awesome. It was a fun night. And then last night I did with Oasis, Hot Yoga and Spin Studio, also sponsor. I just love my sponsors. We did an appreciation night, and we went downtown. We did it was actually just full of women, which, I loved it. I loved the energy. And so we had which I needed at this point, a lay down hot yoga sesh, not too hard, but mostly just restorative flow. And then we went and ate after. So you can see why these are my soul sisters. Let's just mildly exercise just a little so we can check that off, and then go eat a bunch. Yes. So that was really fun. And Oasis is going to do, if you're local, they're going to do those regularly, because they've been so freaking fun. And then tonight, it was hilarious that Jeff was on this podcast. I'm going to his wife, Tasha, her birthday party and their like / Halloween party. So it's been a busy week, but like all super duper things. So yeah, it's been fun. And I hope you're going with the flow, and I hope you're enjoying life. And if you're really going with the flow, stay tuned for this beautiful song by Swear by the Moon.
Microwave. You're the faint breath coming from a black lung. You sold us and we bought it. And we bought it.
A fallen leaf that falls high above a mighty tree, 'cause she's lonely. A broken promise that was once a determined dream. Everything in me you will see.
Am I the fluorescent that's landing on your fake face?
You can take it all from me.
Am I the wallpaper that you hang when I'm out of style?
I will tear you down. Tear you down.
I look suspicious, rip me open like a suitcase.
You can take it all from me.
Destroy the evidence that I ever came this way. And I'll be back again. I'll be back again.
You keep on fighting 'cause it's too hard to let it go. And you remind me of a West Coast overdose. Just treat me gentle and lock me up before you go. And if I should fall, oh my love, you will never know.
And I look expensive and you hang me up like a
You'll
painting.
never know, no, no, no.
And everybody walking by me says the same thing.
I'm bitter and bashful as I hunt for your finger.
If you're an agent for the unaffected underground,
Press them against mine and then I have one again.
you keep quiet or
Oh,
they'll
they'll
make you invisible.
Is that all you want? Is that all you want? Is that all you want from me? Is that all you want? Is that all you want? You can take it all
If you're looking for some time for yourself to relax, release, and unwind, Oasis has the perfect space for you. They offer yoga and spin classes of all levels. Whether you are a beginner or advanced student, Oasis thrives on accommodating all aspects of the practice. Let their serene environment and gracious staff help you in your journey of peace, healing, and strength. Sign up online at www.oasishotyogastudio.com or by downloading the Oasis Hot Yoga Studio app. Feel like yourself. You deserve it.